Nietzsche pointed out that a great deal of what is feigned as morality is actually cowardice. In other words, that there's a difference between not raping someone because one is afraid of being caught and not raping someone because they are valuable, they are sacred in your eyes, and to violate their boundary would be to violate something important in oneself. So this is a really important distinction, and I wanted to go into a correlation that I haven't heard Nietzsche discuss, and that's the distinction between the reptilian operating system and the empathic or transcendent operating system. So you have fight, flight, freeze, and fawn in the 200-year-old crocodile brain. There is no morality that is possible. And what induces this into the primary operating system of human beings, in a sense, a devolution, is childhood trauma, adult trauma that goes unrepaired. In other words, if you shatter the identity of a human being, break their pattern of thinking, feeling, speaking, doing, and being, in a violation protocol that is the opposite of attunement, which is the opposite of empathy, which is the opposite of love, of partnering, of trustworthiness. If you violate this process of empathically relating as a human being, you will trigger a program, a switch in the brain of that person that says, aha, you are not surrounded by human beings, because human beings and spiritual beings, empathic human beings, adults, do not systematically violate the boundaries of others and not repair those boundaries. You are in fact surrounded by reptiles. You are surrounded by crocodiles in human bodies who are operating out of the fight, flight, freeze protocol. And the crocodile brain always attacks what is smaller than it because it can win. And it always runs from what is bigger than it because it will lose in a conflict. It is a conflict-oriented operating system. It's incapable of morality. It's incapable of love. It's not capable of empathy, which is a foundation for morality, for love to actually consider and care what's best for so-and-so. It's incapable of that. We're dealing with reptiles. Now, the reptilian brain is fear-based, which is pain-based, which is incompetency-based, because all pain comes from a certain level of competency or incompetency. Now, the same thing, the competency-incompetency continuum. At very high levels of pain, or very high levels of competency, you have a dynamic where all unnecessary suffering is mitigated. And the necessary suffering that, is part of change, just it's a perceptual dynamic, is understood and transmuted into something valuable. This is a very competent operating system. And in that operating system, there are high levels of abundance of human needs. Survival, security, love and belonging, self-esteem, developing one's innate talents, bringing those talents valuably out into the world, and becoming part of something bigger than oneself. in a competent culture, you have abundance of human needs for all the humans present. There is a tremendous amount of energy available in this natural ecology to meet every single human being's human needs 100 times over. Survival, security of survival, love and belonging. You see, there's no need for 5,000 square foot mansions. Nothing wrong with them, up to a point, but there's no need. And admittedly, the planet cannot support 100 Maseratis per person, 1,000 mansions per person, no. But the survival and security of survival, the love and belonging, the self-esteem to become someone one admires and aspires to be, which is, other than the programming of advertisers, not an indefinite consumer. No one's born, longing to have more things than they can possibly use and enjoy and have time to maintain. But we are born with an innate need to love and belong. So in this dynamic, we have an incompetent culture primarily it's an incompetence in thinking. We don't actually teach a great deal of thought because thinking undermines the dogmas of an unscientific culture. And the primary purpose of an unscientific dogmatic culture is to reinforce the known by fighting against the unknown, to protect against trauma, to protect against the fear of the unknown, for the purpose of shielding projected pain. When you've experienced high doses of unregulated pain in childhood, your natural proclivity is to put all of your energy into not feeling that way again. And when a lot of that was feeling out of control around the sociopathic elements in the giant world, the giant family system, the goal is to not be out of control. And the easiest way to do that is to stay in a very small bud of known reality. And so in that dynamic, one seeks to stay the same, because to change oneself is to change one's experience of the world. To change one's experience into the world is to confront and embrace and deal with the unknown. And within the unknown lies every repressed dread, every repressed fear that we are capable of imagining. And so the elements in culture that are attacking science and data, that are attacking change, are there to protect the cult from the unknown. And to think is to undermine the dogmas that assist with that blindness, with that willful shutting out of reality to protect against change. It's a fear of life, a fear of change, a fear of reality. Well, we don't learn how to think, and so we don't learn how to create high levels of abundance, which means we have high levels of pain because every human being yearns. Every plant yearns for water, sunlight, air, minerals, room to grow, the carbon dioxide. Every plant yearns for that. And if it doesn't have that, it suffers, it withers. Every human being yearns to fulfill their human needs. If those are not there, there's a sense of pain, there's a sense of fear. Pain and fear trigger the reptilian brain for two reasons. First of all, in a dynamic of scarcity, there is a dynamic of either or. There's a dynamic of either or in a dynamic of scarcity. You have to choose. There's only one ice cream cone. There's 5 kids. They all want it. Now, incompetence leads to scarcity. So there's only one and there's a lot. Now, when there's only one and there's a lot, when there's scarcity, in order to get one's needs met, one must become sociopathic. That's the only operating system that will survive. And so that crocodile brain wakes up, says, we're in an incompetent culture operated by reptiles. And in order to overcome that operating, that problem, there's not enough to go around and someone's going to go hungry. And I don't want it to be me. I have to manipulate. I have to lie. I have to do all kinds of things to make sure that I get the limited supply. And I also have to do all kinds of things to make sure that I don't get exploited, used, raped, etc. by one of the giants, because the reptilian protocol in me is mirrored in the reptilian protocol around me. And so if I am perceived as weak, I will be exploited. I will be used. I will be attacked and I will lose. So I need to hide and be secret and all of these things. So this is reptilian operating system. And it's not morality. It's survival. It's survival in pain, in fear, and in scarcity. When you believe in pain, fear, and scarcity, it is a belief in incompetence and in sustained ignorance, because sustained ignorance and incompetence produces that scarcity. Now, when you are afraid of change because you're afraid of the unknown, because you're afraid of trauma, you cannot examine the world intelligently, because all intelligence leads to change, and all change leads to the unknown, leads to exposure to potential trauma. And this is why traumatization of children and leading into the reptilian brain as the primary operating system is such a big problem. But none of this is morality. It's you do the right thing out of fear. And this is necessary. Fear is necessary for reptiles to maintain boundaries. Now, once you create a certain level of competence, a certain level of intelligence, you create a certain level of abundance for all members of your circle. And with the exposure and experience of abundance, you lead into the empathic brain. Through the rational brain is the first one to digest things and see, I see, okay, it's safe here, there's more abundance here, I don't have to lie and cheat. There's so much food here, and truly there is. There's so much food here that we couldn't possibly eat it even if we all wanted to. I mean, it's just too much. You don't need to expend energy to hoard mangoes when you've already got 300 mangoes that are going rotten and there's 10,000 more on all the trees. It just doesn't make any sense. And so the fight, flight, freeze program begins to diminish. And the empathic program is, there is enough, I have enough. There is enough, I have enough. You have enough. Let's become curious. There's a movement towards the curiosity of how are we connected? How do we affect one another? And that's, of course, can be done sociopathically as part of regulation talent. How can I hurt you and do this? That's fine. But there's also the movement towards empathy. Like, Once we learn that we affect one another, and we learn we can make each other feel good or bad, and we learn competence in that domain, it's much more fun to make each other feel good than it is to make each other feel bad, particularly when there tends to be a mirroring dynamic. In other words, if I inject you with the flu and you're around me, now you're coughing and sneezing, and I have to listen to someone coughing and sneezing. It's called shitting in your own backyard. It's not as fun as injecting you with joy and happiness, and now I have a joyful, happy person in my own backyard. And can I do that for myself? So when we can create high levels of abundance, we naturally become more and more empathic. And empathy is a sense of it's more fun to give, it's more fun to love, it's more fun to heal. But we're in a level of competence. And then the highest state, the transcendent brain and the transcendent operating system, acknowledges, perceives, recognizes the unity, that we are one. That you and I are part of a larger ecology, which of course is true scientifically. You ask the most materialistic, reductionistic scientist, is there a connection between this finger and a tree? And the answer is so many, so many. We both share a gravitational constant. The tree is producing oxygen for this body which feeds the finger. The tree is absorbing the carbon dioxide that if we breathed in again would kill us. There's so many areas where we are connected cooperatively with a tree. It's just that the reptilian brain has to dissociate from that which it is consuming and exploiting in a sociopathic paradigm in order to survive in a paradigm of scarcity. So a tremendous amount of morality is cowardice. It is fear. I'm going to be the goody two-shoes child because I'm afraid of being hit like the black sheep, like the scapegoat. I'm going to be the scapegoat because I'm afraid of the insanity of lies in this family. It's like the level of craziness in this family is so thick that for me to pretend like everything's wonderful and my parents are wonderful, etc., it's too dangerous. I'm scared of that level of absurdity, of insanity. So I'm going to be the scapegoat, and I'm going to acknowledge, I'll exaggerate so that you'll allow me, because I'll take on your stuff as well, and that's why you'll tolerate me. You'll let me live in this family system, as I'll pretend to be the part of that's all of your problems, and you'll all pretend that. So we now have a relationship. But at least I'm not insane. At least I'm not burying the fact that my problems, my inadequacies are present in the mix of taking on everyone else's as well. You're all insane. You're pretending it's all me. And that makes no sense in a mathematical formula because I'm coming out of you. I'm born out of this equation. So you don't get, in a metaphorical mathematical equation, you don't get, if you wash your hands with clean soap, you don't get dirty hands. If a clean family produces children, you don't get demonic scapegoats. For that to occur, one must produce a dirty system, a system that is contaminated with whatever it is that is projected out there. This is very important to understand. And so most of morality is cowardice because most human beings have not met their human needs. They're surviving with a low level of security, with an even lower level of love and belonging, with an unconscious, adaptive, false esteem of trying to please others rather than develop their own values and live by them. And they have not discovered their innate talents. They are being used and shoved into boxes in an existing system, and they're not creating vast amounts of abundance for themselves and others. And if they are, it's purely monetary. It's not an abundance of love and well-being. And they're frightened of anything bigger than themselves, as opposed to partnering and transcending the limited sense of identity to become part of something transcendent. So most of morality will be fear-based. Most good behavior or socially sanctioned behavior will come out of fear, as long as the level of scarcity is present, that the predominant operating system is the reptilian brain.